What's up, everybody? This is Bryan and Alex from Books and Boyfriends. If you've seen our first video, we did our first review of a book that we both read. Hope you liked it. If you have not seen it yet, go to our page, click on that thumbnail, and watch that. For anybody that has, this is actually going to be Alex's first solo review.
Solo review.
She reads at about a 5-to-1 clip of me.
Much faster.
So, yes, so much quicker than I do. Basically, she is going to go over a book she read. I will ask her general questions about the book, just so for anybody that wants to understand it, maybe if it catches your eye and you want to read it, more than happy to do so. And we will have this for you guys to just enjoy. So I guess for you, mainly just what you got for us today.
So the book is Dance Upon the Air by Nora Roberts. And I actually have to give a shout out to my bestie, Jen, because she's the one who recommended the books to me. So it's the first in a trilogy, so there's 2 more that come after this. I just started the second one, so in this first series we are introduced to 3 main characters. Nell, who is it's told primarily from her point of view in this book, and then Mia, and then Ripley. So those are the 3 main characters. And we find out later in the book, like maybe midway through, that they're actually witches. Their ancestors stem from the Salem witch trials. Now, not like super dark magic or anything. It's just like everyday magic, kind of like Harry Potter, if you're into that. So which he is, and so am I. So it was really cool to read it. This is the large print that I got from my library. Did not do that. So it's over 500 pages. So it took me a little bit longer than normal to read, just because there are so many pages. But it was definitely also a quick read at the same time. Like, I don't know if that makes sense. It was easy to go through just because it was a really easy read.
Just flows real easily.
Yes, thank you. I was like, I don't know how to say that. Yeah, but it flows really easy. So like I said, so we're introduced to Nell, who's the main character in this book. So she is running from an abusive husband. We don't really find out too much about like how abusive he is until a little further on in the book. But she's seeking refuge on Three Sisters Island, which is where Mia and Ripley live. And she gets a job at the cafe/bookstore that Mia owns. And she starts cooking there, and then eventually she opens up her own like catering business on the island. So it's actually pretty cool. And then you just kind of learn a little bit more about how Mia how everyday magic plays into their life. There we go. I was like, I'm going to say that. So, and then Ripley is a sheriff in town, and then her brother is actually also a sheriff. And so he ends up liking Nell, and they like have a thing going and stuff. And then he actually later proposes to her, but she's like, I can't marry you because I'm still married. And then, yeah, this whole thing blows up. So
Sounds kind of twisted.
Yeah, it was.
Well, you mentioned that. So, as we did in our previous ones, we went over the 4 main arguments of our books, or
Yes.
the book, why we think it's good or what it is. So, the first one is characters, which she touched on. So
4.
So
I
I
give it
see.
a 4 out of 5.
Yes. So she gave it a 4 out of 5. And so why would you think? What do you think kept it at a 4?
Well, okay. So even though the book is told from like Mia's and Ripley's perspective too, along with Nell's, they don't really go too much into detail about Ripley's life or Mia's life, and so I was kind of disappointed.
So lack of development, basically.
I mean, yeah, kind of, because you really only see Nell's storyline here. Like, you just know that Mia lives on the island. She's lived there for a long time, and same thing with Ripley's family, like Ripley and her family.
Sounds like if it was a 500-page book and they did that, it would be 1,000. I never would have finished that book.
But then again, it's a trilogy, so I mean, you have to keep that in mind too.
That's true. So for all you people that like to watch trilogies or anything like that, maybe there's some more development along the way. So hey, we're at a 4 out of 5 for characters. Maybe that'll bump to a 4.5 or even a 5 with the next one. So
yeah.
So obviously you rolled out a little bit of the plot,
yeah,
kind of the storyline. So
yeah. So Nell is, like I said earlier, she's running from her abusive husband. She just got sick of it one day and just she actually she fakes her death as her previous self, and her previous self's name is Helen. So she kills Helen, and she tells her husband, ex-husband, whatever, that she's going somewhere, and she plans it out so when it happens, they actually think that she died in the ocean because her car runs off, it hits a cliff, and then so all they found was the car, and then they just assumed that she plunged into the ocean, and poof, she's gone.
Mysterious.
Yeah. So, but her husband ends up finding her because there was a couple that her and her husband used to run around with. And she's like, oh my gosh, I could have sworn that was Helen. That could have been Helen's twin. And she goes back and tells Evan's sister about it. And then Evan and his sister, which Evan is Nell's husband, Helen's husband, whatever, goes back and tells him about it. And so he takes a trip to Three Sisters Island and seeks her out. And that ends pretty intensely. So
it sounds like obviously when faking something like that, people around may recognize you if you hang out in the same area.
Well,
so
I mean, but she was away. Like, she wasn't close. Like, Three Sisters Island is all by itself. You have to take a ferry to get there.
Okay.
But
good
so I mean,
information
it's a tour.
To know.
So it's a tourist spot. So, but I mean, obviously, it's not such a big world. It's really a small world. So, but I mean, thankfully with Mia's help and Ripley's help, she's able to get away from him, and ultimately has her happily ever after with Zach. So don't mean to spoil that part, but I would want to know that because I was like, come on, I need them to get their happy ending.
Okay, so speaking of spoilers, obviously with this being book 1 of 3, like there's probably a lot more involved. So the climax of these types of books will be a little different because like any of y'all have seen trilogies and movies, like your Star Wars fans, your Lord of the Rings, like all that stuff. I know I'm going sci-fi and all that stuff here, but like the end of the first movie may not give a big jaw-dropping like climax or something that just throws you out the window, whereas like 2 or 3.
Well, the climax for this was whenever like her husband found out where she was and then was like, I'm gonna go get her back because he's very controlling, as abusive people mostly are, very narcissistic, manipulative, and he was like, I'm gonna get her back at whatever cost. So I mean, that was the climax of this book, I feel like, because you see her settle into her life pretty well and she thinks everything's going fine. But Mia and Ripley see something and lurking in the shadows, if you want to say, that's not good. And Mia and Ripley have a conversation, and Mia tells Ripley that she knows that he's going to come after her eventually. And that's what happens. So,
and she gave that a 4.5, by the way.
Yeah, just because I felt like it took forever to get to that point. Like, I understand, again, you have to introduce the characters, story development, know how to get comfortable living there. I get that. But, like, really, it took that long, Too long!
Well, and like we said at the beginning, she reads much faster than I do. So, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but just in the very minimal reading I've done, you tend to get towards or to the climax a little faster than you would in movies because the climax does kind of develop it in of itself in books. Because when you're reading, I mean, depending on because I'm a very visual reader, so like I like to visualize what I'm reading, kind of like watching a movie with no sound. You kind of think of it in your head, but if you're doing that, there's more words that can go into a book to depict that versus a movie.
Yeah. And if
y'all
seen Harry Potter, we won't even get into that.
Yeah. So.
But yeah, it's definitely. I mean, it. Yeah. So and then.
So you gave the book a 5.
Yeah, I gave it a solid 5, just because everything altogether, it was so beautifully written. And, like, it kept me on edge the whole time because I was like, what's going to happen next? I actually stayed up reading, like, finishing the last, 100 plus pages because I was like, I have to finish this. It was getting so intense because it was when Evan had come to the island and he was seeking Helen / Nell. and you had to find out what happened.
Well, and I think that adheres to your point about the plot and the climax being a 4.5 because that if the story flows well and it's easy to read, then you want to keep reading. So
right, yeah, and that's why I was like, okay, I have to stay up late and I have to finish it. So, and I did, and it was really good.
Yeah. So you how long did it take you to read this book?
This one took me a little bit longer, probably like a week and a half, maybe.
Yeah, like 10 days.
Yeah, just because it was. At first, I don't want to say it was hard to get into, but I just was kind of like, okay, like, where is this going to go? Like, my mind was like, okay. Because in the beginning, it introduces you to the three sisters who were back in the Salem witch trial era. So, like, you don't really know where the book is going to go. You're just kind of like, okay. So that's what sets up the scene. And so I just was like, okay, well, what's going to happen? But then it skips to quote-unquote modern day, which is 2001. So, yeah.
So you would say, based on reading this one, does it feel like it's transitioning to the second book really well? Like, I know you haven't read the second one, but like, does it have a good cliffhanger, good transition?
Yes, and without going into too much detail, because I'll cover that in my next solo video. But the next one is about Ripley Todd. So, and I actually, spoiler alert again, but I asked my best friend Jen, who again recommended these books to me. I asked her if each book was like, cause since there's 3 books and there's 3 main characters, if each book is written about them or from their point of view. And she said, yeah. So this one was about Nell. So then the second one's about Ripley. So that means the third one will be about me.
Okay. So that means that, maybe we'll get a little bit more better review from character side next time. Because if one is focusing on each other, then maybe that's why they're going to be broken down that way. So maybe in the next book it'll give a little bit better transition. Mm-hmm. So that maybe that'll take that to a 4.5. But the fact that she rated this a 5 overall, she's maybe not as harsh as I would be on book reviews because I'm so like,
that's
so
because
new
mostly
to it,
everything I read I feel like is a 5. Minus give or take a few. Because they're so good.
Yeah.
It's hard not to. I don't know. It's hard.
Well, we're doing a 0.5 scale, so maybe we should do a quarter scale, like maybe next time. I don't know. Like maybe that'll make
Who asked you?
Yeah, you're right. This is her thing. I'm just along for the ride.
Exactly. So, yep, it's my choice and his obligation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So. I'm the brains behind the operation. Mm-hmm. Okay. Anyway.
So that's basically her review for Nora Roberts' Dance Upon the Air. We'll have the other 2 as done as well. So probably have the second one within the next couple weeks. Our second dual review, will be probably some point next week. Mm-hmm. As we said earlier, because I'm so slow at reading. I'm about 75% of the way through this next book, and let me tell you.
Also, I just kid y'all. I mean, he's a slower reader than I am, but I'm just kidding with him because it doesn't matter whatever pace you read. I'm just glad that he's reading. So let me just say that. I'm glad that you're reading, honey.
Hey. Hobbies are good, and reading is good. So yeah, I'm about 75% of the way through this other book,
and I can't wait to talk about it because I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so on edge.
Yeah, so much stuff happened early on in this book, but there's so many wheels and gears.
It's like
turning.
A firecracker.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that happens and goes on. So just be patient with us. We'll have that one out. But this one, I hope y'all enjoy.
I hope y'all liked my solo review. Again, shout out to my bestie Jen. I'm going to tag her in this video too.
Yeah, so hope y'all enjoy. This has been Books and Boyfriends.
I'm
Alex's review, and I'm Bryan. And
I love it.
And I'm along for the ride.
There we go. Yeah, all right. We'll see y'all next time.
Right, thanks, y'all.